Hello and welcome to Ask MotorInc, where Shumi and I get an opportunity to answer questions that you have posted in MotorInc Circles, which is on the MotorInc app. And for those of you who haven't had the opportunity and have questions that you'd want answered from us, all you need to do is download the app, sign in, and in MotorInc Circles, post your questions with the hashtag AskMotorInc. Now, our first question is from Wick Daz, and it's a great question because he's talking about his existing car. It's a Renault Kwid. He's had it for 4.5 years and he's driven it about 55,000 kilometers, which is pretty solid. And he's saying he can't upgrade just yet, but he's starting to feel a little bit bored with the car. So, what could he do so that he doesn't feel like buying a new car? And I think that's a great question. If the car is running well, stretch it out as much as you can. There are many things that you could do, some that are simple, some that are a little bit more complicated, some that are affordable, some that are a bit more expensive. Which ones you choose to do will depend on your budget and on how long you plan to keep your car. Now, one of the simplest things, depending on where you live, if you're in a part of the country that gets a lot of rain, change the wiper blades. It'll make a difference because older wiper blades tend to get squeaky, they'll leave marks on the windscreen, they won't clean it up well enough, they'll scrub. So, changing the wiper blades, getting a good set, will make the car feel more satisfying every time you drive. Trust me on this. Do try it if you haven't already. And the other thing that you absolutely must look at, and is a bit more expensive, of course, is a new set of tires. This is the first thing I would do because an older set of tires tend to get noisier, they have less comfort to offer, and of course, the performance aspects do deteriorate as well. So, getting a new set of tires, even if they're the same tires but are new, or you go for a more premium set, will change the experience as you'll have less noise, you'll have better comfort, you'll have more grip, and that will certainly bring back that new car driving experience, some of it. Now, one thing that you don't need to do, but could do for that new car feel, to bring that glint in your eye every time you look at your quid again, would be to change the wheels. You could go for a set of alloys, which Renault offers as accessories straight out of the showroom, and those would make the car look cool, cooler at least, right? And this isn't a must have, let's be clear about it. But if you plan to hold on to the car for longer, this might be something that does give it that new car joy and not just the feel. The other thing, which is a bit more complicated, would be the stuff that's happening under the hood. Check out the AC, if it's working well enough, whether it needs any topping up, whether the cooling system needs any refills, so that you have the effectiveness of a new car on those fronts as well. Aside from this, the suspension is one thing worth looking at. At 55,000 kilometers, maybe it would make sense to replace the bushes, get the greasing done, maybe even change the struts, the springs, so that you get that better ride comfort every time you drive. Now, as for the engine, this is something I would do. Go out for a drive. If you've been driving sedately mostly, go out for a real drive where you get to feel the car, feel the engine, work it a bit, and build that connect with the car. After that, let it go in for a service and bring it out and go out for a trip that you've been meaning to do. A trip that may be a weekend trip, but something that requires you to travel, requires you to plan, and that planning and then that trip will build a better sense of connection with the car and bring back some of the satisfaction. After all this, one thing that you can always think of is easy to do is get a car spa done, right? A cabin that's been cleaned out, that's been whipped up into shape, that looks and feels hygienic or all new practically, will also add youth to the car all over again. Now, which one of these things do you decide to do? I would love to know, and do reply to me on the comments. I'll be happy to check back with you and see if there's anything else I could help with. The next question is from Manan Shah, and he's asking about tire pressures and how they can vary from city use to highway use. In his case, he's not mentioned which car he's talking about, but he's saying that the default pressures are 35 and they work fine in the city. But when he goes out on the highway, those pressures bump up as you continue to drive, in his case, to about 39. So he's wondering, do you turn down the pressures for the highway use because they're going to creep up anyways? Or how do you manage them? Now, this is an interesting question because let's take the example of my Ignis. Now, the Ignis gets a default set of pressures, and those, as per my experience now, are on the higher side, because typically when I'm driving the Ignis, they the car itself is not fully loaded. We are a small family, and when we are traveling on the expressway, we are covering distances quickly, but the car's not heavily loaded. In those cases, on that bumpy concrete, it starts to feel bouncy and a little bit jittery. So, what I end up doing is dropping the pressures with the understanding that by offering just a single tire pressure setting, it isn't compensating for loads and speeds and usage. Typically, if you're talking about highway use, we don't actually turn down the pressures, we turn them up. Because when you're traveling faster, the tire is constantly being worked. It's being squished, relaxed as you're traveling, and that builds up heat in the tire any which way. But if you keep the pressures a little bit higher, the amount of flex that the tire goes through reduces, and therefore the heating up of the tire and the air inside it will get reduced. So, this is something that you can try out for yourself and see what works better. Typically, I would say start with a higher pressure setting for the longer drives, and if it works, stick to that. If not, then try and dial it down depending on what the car is doing. But I wouldn't recommend going to a lower pressure first for highway use in the first place. The next question is from Anand Salim, and it's a lovely question. It's a simple question which most people won't even think about, and I have made the mistake with this decision in the past, and I was corrected. So let me tell you that story first. Anand Salim's question is, let's start off there, is that if I had to change only two tires on my car, which two should they be? Should it be the front two or the back two? Now, this happened to me when I was going for a rally. It was called the Mughal Rally, the first time it was ever happening, and I was driving a Ford Endeavour. And the tires on this car were short. I realized it on my drive up to Jammu that I was in deep trouble. Now, being that we were going to be far out and getting tires for the Endeavour wasn't going to be easy, somehow we managed to get two tires. Where should they have gone? My wisdom said that they should go to the rear wheels because this was a rear wheel drive car and they would be doing the hard work of putting the power down onto the road. And that's what I went with. But on the drive also was Indian rally legend Hari Singh, and he told me that that wasn't the right decision. He said they should have been on the front wheels. And I said, but I explained to him that more work is happening at the rear wheels, etc., etc. But he pointed out one simple thing. You're driving in the hills, lots of winding roads. What happens if you lose one of the front tires? You can't control the direction, and control is everything. So, if you are changing tires and if you are only changing two tires, the front two should be a priority because that's what allows you to keep the car in control. But when you do this, do remember that you need to drive with more care because if the rear tires do not have as much grip as the front and you're making quick direction changes, the rear will feel loose. You will find that it will tend to oversteer and that will be dangerous. So keep that in mind. If you're changing only two tires, go to the front first and drive carefully. Our next question is from Manis, and he's talking about his father, who's 58 years old, has been riding a two wheeler his entire life, but has become a new driver now. Congratulations to him. That's awesome to hear. And they have a Punto Evo, and he's wondering that his father, who has a 50-kilometer commute every day, might need an automatic. So, should he get a new car? I would say simply no. Let your dad get comfortable with the idea of driving. Let him use the Punto Evo. Let him come to the point where he says that now I'm comfortable enough with the idea of driving, and I feel that the automatic transmission would be a must have from this point onwards rather than just going for it by default. If he's coming from a two wheeler, he's been working at riding any which way. He's used to doing that little bit of work, and admittedly, as you get older, these things can get more tiring, but I wouldn't go with that as a default unless he expressly asks for it. I think the good thing would be to run the older car, let him get comfortable with it, run with the lower stress of an older car, and then think about shifting up to a new car with an automatic. The next question is from Below Average. Yeah, that's his handle, and it's awesome. And he's asking about tire sizes and how they affect comfort. It's the question between 17 inches and 18 inches, and how much of an impact do they really have on comfort or drivability over our roads? It's a great question with many layers because fundamentally, a larger wheel is the better wheel because it can climb over obstacles more easily. So by default, the 18 inches should be better. But you have to keep in mind that cars are designed to work with certain wheel sizes, and there'll be always a particular wheel size which is the sweet spot. Now, often what has happened is that cars have got updates in the process of which they've got larger wheels. And that means they're being pushed to the edge of the envelope that they were designed for, whether it's the suspension design, the springs and struts that they're using, or just their ability to handle larger wheels. And that means the experience does get degraded because the suspension may not be able to deal with that load better than it does the 17-inch wheels. Also, the overall diameter of the tire, more often than not, remains roughly the same, which means while the rim size has increased, the height of the tire has actually shrunk. And that is what cushions you from many of those impacts on the road. And that is why when you go to larger wheels on the same car with the same width of tire but the shorter sidewall, there is a compromise in ride comfort. Now, many cars, now let's say we've been seeing the Tatas coming up with 19-inch wheels and they ride just fine. That's because those cars have been engineered from the start to deal with the larger wheel sizes. The suspension is meant to deal with those larger wheels, the smaller sidewalls, or the heavier tires. Either which ways, it's been designed to deal with that situation and it just works fine. Now, our next question is from Ramesh Tall. He's back, and this is a simple question. He's asking if he is driving about 12 to 13,000 kilometers a year. And the usage is typically seems to be once a month kind of thing because he'll do 1,000 to 1,200 kilometer trip every time he heads out. And so he's primarily on the highway. Should he get a diesel? Short answer, no. You'll be fine with the petrol. A diesel will work for you if you are traveling way more kilometers than that. I think that's when it will make sense. The petrol will also be simpler to maintain, and that would be the convenient solution for you, as tempting as the diesel will seem at the time of purchase because of the fuel efficiency, but you really aren't driving enough for the diesel to make sense for you. And well, that's all that we have on this episode of Ask MotorInc. We'll get to more of your questions in future episodes. Shumi will be up next. In the meantime, any questions that you have, post them on Motoring Circles. Download the app, it's free. Sign up on the app, it's free. And Motoring Circles is free. And the audience there, the people and the community that you'll meet there is awesome. They are priceless. So hope to see you there. And thanks so much for watching.